You know, if your potted fruit tree isn't giving you any fruit, it's probably not because you neglected it. I mean, it's usually the exact opposite. You cared a little too much. And the single biggest reason? It's the pot. The very pot you thought was perfect for it. Here's the thing, the bigger the pot, the bigger the problem. You can spend 2, maybe 3 years babying a tree and get absolutely nothing back. Just green leaves and lost time. Nice and green, no fruit. So, I've been looking into what actually works, and I've put together 7 really simple fixes that flip a tree from just growing wood to actually growing fruit. We'll also cover 5 really foolproof trees if you're just starting out. And mistake number 1? Almost nobody believes it, because it's the exact opposite of what those little plant tags tell you to do. Think of it kind of like a quiet energy budget. The tree can either spend its energy on leaves and wood, or on flowers and fruit. Tip that budget the wrong way, and the tree stays gorgeous and completely empty. So, let's count down the 7 things that drain that fruit budget. Starting with the easy ones. Mistake number 7, just simple impatience. A young fruit tree has to grow up before it ever flowers. Most of these container trees need maybe 1 to 3 years to reach that fruiting age. And I see a lot of folks giving up right before the payoff. Here's the trap they fall into. They dig the tree up, move it around, or swap it for a new one every single season. And that just resets the clock to 0. Every time. I hear this all the time from folks in our community. Someone swaps trees 3 years in a row, gets nothing, then finally leaves the 4th tree alone. And it fruits the very next spring. The fix here costs you nothing. Pick one healthy tree, leave it in place, and just let it settle. Don't overthink it. Patience is really the cheapest fertilizer there is. Mistake number 6 is ignoring chill hours. A lot of fruit trees need a set number of cold hours, usually between 32 and 45 degrees or so, before they'll wake up and bloom in the spring. No, the numbers vary a lot. Peaches want a few hundred. Apples want even more. While most citrus barely needs any. If you plant a high chill apple in a warm climate, it might just leaf out late, bloom weirdly, and skip fruiting altogether. That right there? That's the culprit. So, just match the tree to your winter. If you live somewhere mild, pick a low chill variety on purpose. Simple as that. Moving on to mistake number 5, a missing pollination partner. You see, plenty of trees just can't fruit alone. They need pollen from a second, compatible variety nearby. And if you're growing on a small balcony, that partner usually just isn't there. So the tree flowers, looks absolutely beautiful, and then drops every single blossom. Leaves you with nothing. The fix here is pretty simple. Read the label before you buy. You can either choose a self-fertile variety, which is really the lazy gardener's dream, or keep a compatible partner close by. You can even hand pollinate with a little soft brush when the flowers open. 5 minutes with a brush can honestly be the difference between a bare branch and a full one. If you're ever not sure, just assume it isn't self-fertile and grab a partner for it. A little insurance beats a whole season of empty flowers. So, that wraps up the easy tier. Honestly, none of those first 3 are really your fault. They're just conditions the tree needed and didn't get. But these next 4 mistakes, they're a bit different. Because these are the ones we usually cause ourselves, just by trying a little too hard. Mistake number 4 is not enough direct sun. And I think this is the one people underestimate the most. A fruit tree literally builds its harvest out of sunlight. To actually set and ripen that fruit, they need a lot of it. Leafy greens can scrape by on 3 or 4 hours. Sure, but fruiting trees, like citrus, they want 8 to 12 hours of direct sun a day. Give them less than that, and they'll grow leaves, maybe even flower. But then they'll just drop every blossom. There simply isn't enough energy to finish the job. The fix here costs nothing but a little effort. Put the pot on a wheeled caddy and just chase the sun across your balcony. Or move it to your brightest wall. But hey, if your space tops out at 4 or 5 hours, don't fight it. Pick a tree that's actually happy in part shade. Mistake number 3 is pruning the wrong way. And this one, it quietly breaks more trees than any pest out there. Trees like apples, pears, and cherries carry their fruit on these short, stubby little branches. And those branches take 2, maybe 5 years to mature. So, when you grab the shears and chop every branch back just to make the tree look tidy, you're often cutting off the exact wood that was finally about to fruit. Even worse, those hard cuts trigger a rush of fast, upright new shoots. That just burns through the tree's stored energy and shoves it right back into a young, fruitless phase. You end up delaying your harvest by another year or 2. The fix? Be lazier with the shears. Seriously, just remove the dead or crossing branches. Maybe gently bend some young limbs horizontal to encourage flowering. And otherwise, just leave it alone. With fruit trees, restraint almost always beats enthusiasm. Mistake number 2 is too much nitrogen. And honestly, this is the most well-meaning mistake of all. Nitrogen is the nutrient that just screams grow. So when we feed our trees generously, they reward us with lush, deep green leaves and these long, vigorous shoots, and almost no fruit. All that feeding basically tells the tree to just keep building leaves and wood instead of flowers. Here's a little lazy gardener trick. If your new shoots are growing more than a foot or so in a single season, just stop the nitrogen completely. Instead of buying a big bag of high nitrogen fertilizer you don't even need, switch to something low nitrogen and high potassium. That alone will flip the tree from making leaves to making flowers. And just one quick safety note before we move on. If you're using a granulated fertilizer, scratch it deep down into the soil and water it in right away. Some of these fertilizers smell really tempting to dogs. So keeping it buried and watered in just keeps curious noses and little hands out of the dirt. Which brings us to mistake number 1. The one I promised you at the very start. And the one almost nobody believes. It isn't a pest. It isn't your soil, and it isn't bad luck. Here's the crazy part. That fancy pot you bought to save your tree, it might be the exact reason it won't fruit. Mistake number 1 is giving your tree a pot that's way too big. I know that sounds completely backwards. But think about it. A fruit tree in a giant pot does exactly what a person with unlimited space and an unlimited credit card does. It just keeps building. Big roots, big leaves, endless green growth. It never feels any pressure to actually reproduce. Restrict those roots a little, though, and everything changes. I was looking at some container trials, and plants grown in smaller pots stayed noticeably shorter and put out less leaf. And yes, while the total overall size went down, the share of energy that plant funneled straight into fruit actually went up. The tree stops pouring everything into wood, and finally gets down to business-setting fruit. Here's the whole idea in a nutshell. Leaves make sugar, and the roots and shoots spend it. A roomy pot plus heavy feeding keeps that tree flush with energy, so it just keeps building. But crowd the roots a little bit and ease off the feeding. The tree senses it's time to stop growing and start making seeds. That's when it flips into fruiting mode. The fix here is almost insultingly easy. Pot up gradually, just one size at a time. And once your tree is fruiting happily in a nice, snug container, resist the urge to rescue it into something bigger. A slightly root-bound fruit tree is actually a happy, productive tree. So, that's all 7 mistakes. And did you notice? Every single fix we talked about was basically free. But maybe you don't want to troubleshoot an old, stubborn tree. Maybe you just want something that fruits fast. And honestly, forgives almost everything. Quick question before we dive into this part. Though, are you team citrus or team berries? Let me know down in the comments. Because this next list, it covers both. Let's count down the 5 absolute most foolproof fruit trees you can grow in a pot. I rank these guys based on 4 lazy gardener criteria: how small a pot they'll put up with, how fast they fruit, how little winter chill they actually need, and basically, how hard they are to kill. We'll start at number 5 and work our way up to my top pick. Number 5 is the Bonanza peach. This is a genetic dwarf that stays around 4 to 6 feet tall. But it still loads itself with full-size fruit. It's self-pollinating. So you only need one of them. It asks for only about 250 chill hours or so. And a healthy plant? It can give you somewhere around 30 to 60 pounds of peaches. All from just a 15 to 20 gallon pot. Just picture a knee-high little tree, practically bending under armfuls of real, full-size peaches right there on your balcony. That's the payoff. Your one real job with this guy is just to thin the baby fruit in the spring, so the branches don't snap under all that weight. Not a bad problem to have, right? Moving to number 4, the Sunshine Blue Blueberry. This is a compact, semi-evergreen bush. It's self-fertile, handles heat way better than most blueberries, and needs under 300 chill hours. So it actually fruits even in mild climates. You can expect 5 to 10 pounds of berries a year from just a 7 to 10 gallon pot. Small bush, big daily ritual. It basically hands you a warm handful of berries to pick on your way past it every morning. The only real catch here is the soil. Blueberries demand acidic ground around a pH of 4, 5 to 5 or so. So just mix in plenty of pine bark. Keep it mulched. And this guy will reward you for years. Number 3 is the Calamandan. This is a tough little ornamental citrus that fruits almost year-round. Think of it as the tree that's just never empty. You get these glossy little orange globes hanging on it in every season. Even when everything else on the balcony has gone completely quiet, it's perfectly happy in a 10 to 15 gallon pot. It needs basically 0 winter chill, tolerates indirect light way better than most citrus, and it just shrugs off short cold snaps down near 20 degrees. Now, the fruit is pretty tart. Think marmalade, drinks, and dressings, rather than eating it straight off the tree. But you'll have a steady supply of them with almost no effort at all. Coming in at number 2 is the Meyer lemon. This is the tree that turns total beginners into proud citrus growers. It's self-fertile, needs almost no chill, and flowers and fruits nearly all year long. When this guy blooms, the whole corner of your balcony smells like a citrus grove. Honestly, that fragrance alone is worth the pot. Just give it 8 to 12 hours of sun, and maybe put it on wheels so it can follow the light. The one big rule to remember here, it hates wet feet. So use a fast draining mix and just let it dry out slightly between waterings. Because overwatering and root rot, those are really the only things that threaten it. And my number 1, most foolproof pick, is the fig. Figs were practically built for pots. They actually fruit better when their roots are crowded, which is basically the entire lesson of this video wrapped up in a single plant. It's the ultimate tree for people who want real fruit without any of the fuss. A variety like Chicago Hardy or Brown Turkey can hand you fruit in just a year or 2. They need very little chill, and ask for almost nothing but sunshine and the occasional drink. No pollination partner, no fussy soil, no babying. If you only plant one tree after watching this, make it a fig. It's really the laziest path to real fruit there is. Oh, and one quick honorable mention, the dwarf apple on M27 rootstock can fruit beautifully in a pot. 2. A chill-appropriate variety like Anna works even in warm zones, but it does need a permanent stake for support, and it's a bit more prone to disease. So it's a real step up in effort. Maybe save that one until you've got a season or 2 under your belt. So let's bring it all home. If your potted fruit tree won't fruit, It's almost never because you're a bad gardener. It's usually because you're just caring a little too hard. Give it enough sun. Ease off the nitrogen. Go easy with the shears. And remember the number one fix, a snug pot, not a giant one, is what finally triggers the fruit. So, you can either rescue the tree you've already got, or start fresh with a forgiving one like a fig or a Meyer lemon. Now, I want to hear from you. Which tree are you planting first? The fig, the Meyer lemon, the peach, or the blueberry? Let me know down in the comments. And do one last thing before you go save this video. Because those chill hour numbers, that is exactly what you'll forget the moment you're standing at the nursery this weekend. So go grab a snug pot, save some money, and have some fun. Happy, lazy growing.